This is Your City in Action here on Salina Community Access Television. I'm Todd Pittenger, the news director from the Rockingham Media Group of radio stations here in Salina, most notably News Radio 1150 KSAL. Joined today by a special guest, Salina Police Chief Brad Nelson. And Chief, we were just talking, I asked you what, you've been here a couple years now? Going on, what, 4.5, 5 years now. It's hard to believe. It seems like just yesterday we had you on the show on the radio station talking about the new police chief in Salina. Time flies, doesn't it?
It does. It does not seem like it was about 3.5 years ago that I was sitting here, but it has flown.
Well, give us just a little bit of background on Brad Nelson. I know you come from Columbia, Missouri, University of Missouri, Missouri Tiger. We won't hold that against you.
Thank
but
you.
Give me a little background.
Well, I was born and raised in Nebraska. Then we moved to Blue Springs, Missouri in the late 70s and went to college in Warrensburg, Missouri, Central Missouri State.
My son's going there right now.
Yeah.
He will
UCM.
Graduate next year. Yeah.
When I was
He's
there,
a mule.
Yeah, when I was there, Central Missouri State University, but now it's UCM.
Right.
Graduated from there in '84 with a degree in criminal justice. Was hired by a small town northeast of Kansas City, Excelsior Springs, Missouri. Most famous for the Elms Hotel.
Right.
That's about it. And anyway, stayed there 8 years, which was good because I met my wife when I was there. And then in '92, we moved to Columbia. I just wanted to go to a bigger city. And I spent almost 21 years there, 20 years and 11 months there. And I retired in July of 2013 from the Columbia, Missouri Police Department.
Of course, you never, ever totally retire, do you?
No, you don't. And I never planned to retire. It was just, I like to say I was eligible to retire.
Right.
So I took the opportunity because I wanted to be a police chief at some point when I was still relatively young.
Sure. And then the Salina job came up, and next
yep.
thing you know, you are relocating the family to Salina, Kansas.
Salina,
Just the
Kansas.
drive down Interstate 70, right?
Yeah, slightly boring. It's almost exactly 300 miles from Columbia, Missouri to Salina, Kansas. But anyway, we've been very happy since we've been here, and the folks are fantastic and a very supportive community.
A little bit about the Salina Police Department. Again, this is Your City in Action on Salina Community Access Television. A conversation with Salina Police Chief Brad Nelson. Let's talk a little bit about policing across the country. I know the last several years, there's been a little bit of angst toward police. I think maybe here in Salina, we've been kind of sheltered from that. I know about a year ago, it popped up on one of my memories. I did a story about some people had erected a sign there at the Salina Police Department saying how they are thankful and happy for our police department. Do you feel the angst here that maybe they feel in some other areas in the country?
Not near the level. I've had a few instances myself where people obviously weren't proud of what I do for a living.
Right.
But nothing compared to places I've been to. I mean, you can't even Columbia, Missouri has lots and lots and lots more.
I know they had some strife on the University of Missouri campus.
They did. And one of the first things I noticed when I got here is seriously how supportive the community is. And when people ask me what I mean by that, basically I mean they let us do our job. They don't necessarily, there's no problem with questioning what we do, why we did it. We'll tell you why we did it. But it's the issue of everyone thinking they can be a better police officer than you are standing in front, front of them. And that just, with no experience. I'm not saying they couldn't be at some point, but most of your police officers have done this for a long time. And then to automatically question everything we do, that wears on you. It truly does.
Absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about crime and as it relates to Salina. Every year the FBI puts out statistics. I go over those. I was looking at those before I came up here today. There's nothing really that seems to jump out at me here about Salina. I think we're pretty much normal, even below the line in some things. A lot of violent crime here in Salina. What is the most prevalent crime in Salina?
Theft from vehicles, theft from houses, burglaries and such, property crime, and most of that's driven by the need for money, drugs, to buy drugs.
And we're at, I hate to say it, but we're at a good location, intersection of two main interstates, Interstate 135, Interstate 70, drug trafficking. There's probably more drugs than we know that go by here every day.
Oh, absolutely. It goes up and down our highways. That's very, very true.
Some words of advice out there maybe about how I don't become a crime victim.
I think I've said this I've done this for 33 years, but if just be a good neighbor, and if you see your neighbor's garage door open, go over and tell them the garage door is open.
Right.
Don't leave valuables in plain view because you're just asking for them to be stolen. Doesn't make us right, but you're making it easy, especially those that leave plain view valuables and do not lock their cars. And hopefully the days of leaving your keys on the visor are over.
Right.
Don't do that.
Right.
Lock your property. I've always said I'm not going to be a victim, or I'm going to do everything I can not to be a victim. The biggest thing I tell folks, and I've told them for years, when you pull out in a parking lot, you get out of your car, just look around. Look and see if there's anybody acting suspiciously. Bad guys are predominantly bad guys. They don't just all of a sudden materialize out of nowhere. They're not hiding behind bushes. I mean,
Right.
they're going to approach you at some point, and the key is you see them before they get to you. That's what I tell folks. If you see anything unusual in a parking lot and there's somebody walking towards you, hit your panic alarm on your car, get back in your car, lock the door. There's a lot of things you can do to reduce your chances of being a victim.
Again, our conversation today is with Salina Police Chief Brad Nelson here on Community Access Television's Your City in Action. Let's talk about some of the technology, how it's changed through the years since you were a rookie police officer up until the time you're a police officer. I know Salina, I saw the stories come out, Kansas City, Wichita, some of those police departments are just now getting body cameras. You've had them here in Salina for several years, and that's just a little bit of the technology you have. I know you have those tag readers now that in your cars as well. Talk about how some of the technology out there helps you and your officers in their everyday job.
Sure, we call them force multipliers, but basically it's just technology allowing us to do a better job without having multiple more police officers. The license plate readers you spoke of, we have 2 cars that has that technology placed on them. They literally read every single license plate they drive by and compare them to existing data bank as far as to see if the car is wanted, if the registered owner has a warrant. I said the car is wanted. The registered owner, if the vehicle's been stolen.
If the plate's expired,
the
maybe?
plates, well, not necessarily expired, improper registration. Well,
Right.
it doesn't do improper registration either, but if the plate is stolen, it'll do it. Not
If
necessarily.
it doesn't belong to the vehicle that it's on.
Only if it's stolen, if
Only
it's
if it's
reported
stolen,
stolen. Yeah, it won't tell you if it's expired or anything, but
Right.
it'll tell you if it's a stolen license plate. And that's what predominantly most of the alerts we get from
Right.
the system is because of stolen license plates.
So for instance, in the overnight hours, an officer can drive through the parking lot of the motel and it'll run all those tags and you can tell maybe if somebody is there who has a warrant
Yes.
or maybe, you know, somebody you need to talk to.
Yeah, and they do that, I would say nightly, and it tells you it's who the registered owner is. Just because a car is there doesn't necessarily mean the registered owner is in
Correct.
the hotel, but it
Yes.
certainly gives you a place to start.
Right.
And then you go to the clerk and say, is this person registered at your
Right.
hotel? And you go from there. But
I don't know.
it's made, the LPR system, license plate reader system, has made countless arrests.
I was going
because
to say, periodically we have done stories, they've given them to us in our daily police briefing, where you have solved crimes, you've arrested even people from out of state who are passing through. You've helped solve crimes because of this simple piece of technology that you have now.
Yep, that's one example. In the body cams, Chief Hill actually had, I would say, I think 10 or 12 of the body cams before I even got here. So that was very innovative on his part. But I knew when I arrived here in December of 13 that we had 10, but we had 70-some police officers.
Right.
That means we're 60-some short.
Yes.
You can't just have partial amount of the officers that have the body cams. You have to have all or nothing,
Right.
pretty much. So that was certainly one of the goals of mine, was to get those additional, for patrol officers, additional 30-some cameras, which we did, that actually we purchased with primarily forfeiture funds.
The officers that I've talked to like the body cams. Not only are they good for the public, they're good for the officer also, because that camera doesn't lie. It tells exactly what happened during, whether it be a traffic stop or an interview or whatever. I think the body cam is good for the public and good for the officer also. Would you agree?
Absolutely. It's been shown it changes the behavior of both. It makes the officer probably act a little bit better,
Right.
and it makes the person you're filming better too,
Right.
because they know they're being captured. So it's a plus plus. I can say the majority of newer officers, 10 years and under, understand it, love it,
Right.
etc. But the old dogs that have been
Right.
here forever, they're not quite into it as
So
much
the
as
young
the
guys that grew up with the camera phones
Yes,
and able
all
to shoot
that.
video from your phone, it's no big
Yes,
deal to them.
they understand it and why we do it. The older guys struggle with it a little bit, and I get that. But not only do we have the body cams, we have the dash-mounted cameras
Right.
too. So I mean, there's a lot going on as far as technology goes. You have the mobile data terminals that were in all cars. Now they've been in cars for quite a few years, but the ability on those to just run people in your car to see if they're wanted, it's pretty impressive.
Let's talk about some of the new things, new and exciting things. I know you've got a fairly new range now. Talk about the new range you have.
The new range is something that literally, I arrived here December 2nd of 2013, and I qualified December 3rd of 2013
Right.
because I wanted to wear this uniform.
Sure.
And I was pretty disappointed
Right.
in the overall range.
It's pretty underwhelming, wasn't it?
it was,
I mean, 30 years ago, it was good. And it basically, for those that don't know where it was, it's the old animal shelter, right?
Right, and the old landfill.
Right.
I mean, that's where cities put ranges
Yes.
because it has the least value as far as if they're
Right.
ever going to put something on it. And that's unfortunate, but that's true nationwide. So anyway, it was a goal early on of mine to get a new facility, a new training center range for the officers, because there's nothing more that has a potential liability than officer-involved shooting.
Absolutely.
And honestly, that range was, maybe I'll say the word embarrassment, but for a town this size,
Right.
that range was embarrassing.
We can do better.
We can do better, and we need to do better. And it's taken a couple years, but we have a lot of support because rangers aren't, it's
Right.
expensive.
Absolutely.
And I added on the training center part, and the reason, so it's not just a range where you go out there and shoot targets.
Right.
People don't realize, but we just don't give officers guns and say, go
Right.
shoot. There's hours and hours of training that you have to have
Your
before.
SWAT team trains out
Yes,
there.
you have to be trained before. So that's why we added the training center component to the range. It's been approved. It's been on the 5-year capital improvements plan for a couple years now. The money's been
allocated
for
right?
yes, thank you. And it looks like in January, February of next year, they'll actually break ground. Right now, they're doing all the architectural design portion,
Right.
and I'm very excited about it. I cannot wait till we break ground. I can't wait till it's open for business.
And then you're going to have officers all the time wanting to go out there. Right now, it's not that desirable to be out there, but now the guys are going to want to go out there, right?
Yes, it's going to have 10 lanes for a handgun and 2 100-yard rifle lanes, which is just so far and above what we've ever had.
Absolutely, yes.
We'll be 100 years old as a police department in 2020.
Okay.
So for 97 years, we've waited for this. We can wait another year, but and we've never had a range that was built for us. We've literally had somebody over the years that had a Caterpillar or something, or a back, and they just dug a berm, pushed a berm up,
Yep.
and put some steel stanchions up and said, now you have a range. And truly, we can do better than that, and we're going to, commencing next year.
Again, we are talking with Salina Police Chief Brad Nelson here on Access Television's Your City in Action. Chief, you unveiled a new piece of technology just a little earlier this week, kind of a dual-pronged piece of technology. It can be a moving target, but it can help maybe in hostage situations. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, we need to shoot a lot more than just static targets.
Right.
I mean, because
They don't just stand
they
there
don't
like
just
this and
stand there.
wait? No?
And we need to incorporate the moving part. And this literally is called a MotoShot system. If you want to Google MotoShot, you would find it. But it's just a platform, battery operated with a motor, 4 wheels, and you mount a stanchion on it and a target. And the operator just makes it move back and forth. It changes any direction you want to.
So it's a remote control thing with
Yes.
a joystick that an
Yes.
operator uses.
It goes 3 to 5 miles an hour. It says it goes walking speed, a brisk walking speed. It can change direction any way you want it to go, and it makes shooting a lot more difficult. But in turn, that'll make our officers a lot better, shot as far as moving targets go.
And it can be more than just a moving target, though, right?
Correct. You can put different options on it. One of the options we went for was about a 6-foot pole camera. Camera mounts on the end of the pole. You can drive that up to windows. You can look into windows as long as the curtains are open, of course. You can drive up to cars and see if anybody's hiding in the cars, because believe it or not, people do that. They hide in the back seat.
Or see if there's a bomb or a
See if-
grenade
yeah,
or something in
yes.
the car, if it's that sort of a call, right?
And the operator, the police officer, will be a safe distance away, looking on a LCD monitor, and he'll see exactly what the camera's seeing. But that's more technology. That's more designed, not necessarily a full force multiplier. That's designed to save us.
Right.
Because obviously the most important thing cops look at is going home at night. That's
Absolutely
what everybody
right.
wants to do, is to go home.
That's
And that's
absolutely
another piece of equipment that'll make them safer.
All right, all of this equipment is great. It makes the lives easier for officers. It makes us all maybe a little bit safer. But if you don't have officers on the force, if you're not fully staffed and you don't have people to use this equipment, it doesn't do any good, does it?
No,
Talk about staffing. I know across the country it's an issue, and I know it's probably an issue right here. Tell me, when you're at full staff, how many officers do you have, and how many do you have now?
Today we have 73. We're allocated 84.
Right.
And
So you're about a dozen down.
a dozen down. And since I've been here, it kind of goes up and down because it's tough being a cop. And
Sure,
it's a
absolutely.
long process.
Physically and mentally.
Yes, and it's 14 weeks at KLETC out
That's
by
the,
Yoder,
right,
Missouri.
that's
yeah.
the Law
Kansas Law
Enforcement Training
Enforcement
Center, right?
Very good. So it's 14 weeks there, and then they have to come back and have 15 weeks of field training. So it's 29 weeks of training.
Right.
I'd say 15-20% of that doesn't make it through.
Right.
So they leave.
Well,
And
let's talk about even before that training begins, you've got to pass a test here locally, right?
Yeah. First
Not
thing
just anybody can go through that training.
First thing you take is a written test. You have to pass that. Then you have your first interview, and if you pass that, then it's a long process. But we have definitely shortened it because we don't want people Well, because the actual hiring, the people that are eligible to be a police officer, that want to be a police officer, that pie has gotten so small, and we're all vying for the same people. And part of the way we hire people or get them hired is we make it as short a period as we can, so they're not hired by another agency. So we're down to just under 2 months, where it used to be 6 months, to be honest with you.
So 2 months to go through the process to then become eligible to
Yes.
go through the law enforcement training center.
Yes, and you go, at their leisure, they have every year, I think they have 6 classes, so it's one of those 6 classes. They go to that, come back, have the FTO, and it is a long process, but it needs to be, because obviously what we do.
Absolutely.
Most we've had since I've been here was 78, and the least we've had was 68. So boy,
So you're somewhere in the middle, right?
it seems like we always are, and it's frustrating. I mean, I could honestly say I lose sleep over it, but there's only so much you can do. We have a very supportive commission. I have a very supportive boss, my city manager. So that's not the case. Our salary, our salaries could always be better. Don't get me wrong. But we're not like in the we're not in the low part of salary. We're in the top
It's a
10.
competitive salary.
It's a very
for a city this size.
For a city this size, it's a very competitive salary, but I think a lot of the issues, the younger generation, the millennials, I think they want to be near a metropolitan area so they can go do whatever kids do to have fun, and we don't have that here in Salina, Kansas. So I think that's part of the problem, but by far the biggest issue is that the number of people, kids, young adults, that want to be police officers is so much smaller than it was in my day. When I tested at Columbia, Missouri in 1992, we had to go to the Mizzou basketball arena to test, because there was about 400 of us. And now you can do it in a closet in Columbia, Missouri. I mean, literally, it's almost that bad. And we're certainly, numbers are down. I've said it before, but the quantity's down significantly, and to some extent the quality's down too, and that makes it tough. And again, we're all vying for the same small amount of people that want to be police officers.
Well, tell me about some of the different divisions you have there at the police department for anyone who's watching and might maybe remotely be interested. It's not just an officer driving around in a car on patrol. I know you have bike patrol. You have various things that officers do. Talk about some of the things that it encompasses.
And that's what drew me to this city, because for a town this size, there's an awful lot of opportunities for police officers. There's motorcycles. I'm a big motorcycle fan. We're going to have motorcycles as long as I'm here.
Harley Davidson.
Harley Davidson, that's right. So we have a motor unit. We have a bicycle unit. We have the detective unit if you want to be a detective. We have the drug task force if you're interested in that type of work to be on the drug task force.
You want to be an undercover cop, essentially, right?
Yes. And a lot of people, our drug task force is very, very impressive for one Kansas, for a city this size. It's very impressive. Thinking of other units, and obviously the promotional process. We have sergeants, we have lieutenants, we have captains, we have deputy chiefs. There's an awful lot of opportunities.
And you have school resource officers.
SROs, thank you. Sorry, I forgot that.
And do you have DARE anymore?
We didn't have DARE. No, we didn't have. They pulled out of that before I got here.
The school resource officers, though, kind of encompass a little bit what DARE used to do, working with the kids, and they are in the schools every day.
They are. That's right. We actually. We have a contract for 4, but I've only been able to give them 3 since I've been here, because our numbers are just.
Absolutely.
We had to pull
You can't give them
one.
what you don't have, right?
Right. Priority always has to be the street. And when I say the street, I'm talking about the officers that are out there answering the calls for service. That has to be kept. It can't go below a certain number, minimum staffing, and it hasn't been below that since I've been here. But it's at the expense of our detective units. Some 1 unit down. The drug task force units 1 unit down, or 1 officer down. So it's not just the patrol division suffering. We're taking people from everywhere to supplement patrol.
And tell me about your SWAT team. It encompasses what, officers from all of the divisions, is that right? It's kind of the best of the best, right?
I was
those that are a little more physical, right?
Here's what I'll say. I was a 10-year SWAT cop, so I would agree with that. But I don't know if everybody would agree with that. But
is it voluntary? How does that work?
It is voluntary. It's it's a selection process. We used to always say we were high speed, low drag, which means we knew what we were doing and we didn't cause a lot of problems. I'm pretty sure that's what it means. But it's hard to get on the team, but I mean, once you're on it, like I said, I was on it for 10 years, and probably one of the best assignments I had in my career was being a SWAT member.
It doesn't get called off often here in Salina, but when it does, I've been out several times and saw them in action. Like I said, I don't think they get called out often, but when they do, it is for something that is a big deal.
Right.
They seem to get it taken care of pretty quickly.
I appreciate that, and I've been very impressed. Again, I have a frame of reference from where I came from, and I would hold this team against where I came from. They primarily what most SWAT teams do is serve high-risk search warrants.
Right.
But thankfully, we don't have many hostage situations, which
Right.
that's a great problem not to have.
Yep.
So primarily they are doing high-risk search warrants, or when we have the occasional really bad guy
Yeah.
that needs to be caught and we think we know where he is, we're going to send the SWAT team after him.
And I know you cooperate with the sheriff's office. I know last summer, I know you were out in the county helping with some things. I think you have a good working relationship with the new sheriff and the sheriff's office.
I agree. I've been very impressed by that because that's not, I don't want to say it's not
right.
common, but I've seen
It's not
places-
uncommon.
It's not uncommon. I've seen places where it's just two alpha
us
male-
against them,
alpha
right?
dogs don't want to get along, and I'm
Right.
telling you, I think part of it's because we're in the same building.
Right.
So it's kind of hard not to get along when you see each other every day.
Right.
We have a lot of meetings. My deputy chief and I, and Sheriff Solden and his undersheriff, we have lunch about every month or two just to talk, not
Right.
necessarily about things. But his office is a number of steps from mine office, and I go down there, and he comes up to my office, and yes, I think we have a great relationship.
Again, talking with Salina Police Chief Brad Nelson here on Your City in Action on Salina Community Access Television. All right, Chief, final question. I want you to talk about the Citizen Academy. I know they're enrolling a new class right now. I've been through the Basic Academy, and then I went through the Advanced Academy as well. I absolutely loved it. I'm thinking of enrolling again. Tell me a little bit about the Citizen Academy.
I think in my career, that's probably the most positive thing that any agency can do is to have a Citizens Academy, because those folks come in, may or may not know, they obviously have an interest in law enforcement,
Right.
but they leave with now a knowledge of why we do what we do.
Right.
And I like to say they're the best ambassadors we have if we do our job right during the Citizens
absolutely,
Academy,
yes.
which we certainly try to. But they get exposed to so many different things of what we do, and again, why we do it. I'm positive they go forth when people say something really crazy about, especially our department, local department, if they say that somebody says we're doing something and you know it's not true,
Right.
I have no doubt you'll say that's not true.
Right.
They don't do that.
Absolutely.
And I love that. And like I said, phenomenal ambassadors. I didn't know you'd been to both of them.
Yeah, I can tell you, my
impressive.
experience, I was with, and I'll throw his name out there, with Brent Rupert. I did a ride along with him. He was just Officer Rupert then.
Yep.
We went screaming across town, 1039, lights and siren for those that don't know. We put out a fire with a fire extinguisher, and then a little bit later we had to go pick up someone on a warrant or someone who was wanted by the state parole, and we had to go take him to the jail. So he stayed. I actually walked behind the guy and took him by the arm and walked him around, and I had a great experience, and I absolutely loved it. And they get kind of the full experience. You do a little bit of everything: courts, drug task force, SWAT. You do a ride along. It's just basically encompasses the life of a police officer, right?
Right. And I've told people before, in this day and age, maybe in years past we haven't been as transparent as we needed to be, but I'm saying now we certainly are. There's hardly anything I won't tell folks. Probably not stuff with narcotics, how we do that,
Right.
or as far as SWAT operations, what we do to get people out without anybody being hurt.
Right.
We don't necessarily talk about that, but everything else. I mean, there's you can ask us about anything, and we're going to give you the answer.
Chief Brad Nelson, thank you so much for joining us. We'll come back. Let's do this again. I could do a full show. I want to talk about social media when we come back, and how it can. I'll get on my soapbox on how anybody can throw anything out there on social media, whether it's true or not, and it just absolutely explodes and takes off. And people, well, since I saw it on the internet, it's got to be
Has
true.
to be true.
And I spend too much time diffusing those things, putting out fires, I call them, just responding to things that just absolutely aren't true. And just quickly, does that drive you as crazy as it does me?
It does. I do most of our Facebook stuff for the police department, and I have to pick and choose what I'm going to say,
Right.
because some things aren't worth arguing about. There's people out there that they want you to engage them,
Right.
and those people I tend to ignore.
Same way.
I have no problem with having a conversation as long as it's civil
Right.
and we're not spouting untruths.
Right.
I have no problem with that. But
Right.
I would love to come back for that topic. Let's do it.
Sounds good. We will make a date and do that at a later date.
Outstanding.
Chief Nelson, thank you so much for joining us. I'm Todd Pittenger from the Rockingham Media Group of radio stations, and we'd like to thank you for joining us today on Your City in Action here on Community Access Television.